We're off at the races again. Here we go. Well, I had to do a fourth line on the thumbnail today. My God, I thought it would be a quiet one. How run I am. A tasty show for all whovians across the generations, which is why we have our Bigenerates show on a Wednesday, showing we can debate, argue, agree with respect, humour and passion. The way it should be done. And the way, I have to say I've been shocked at the fandom sometimes. We love diverse viewpoints and everyone has a place here to share their views. We listen, we talk. Our ears are open. But we do have strong views and convictions on our favourite TV show, and that's fair. Today's no different. The Tardis Travels YouTube chat between RTD and Steven Moffat, very illuminating. Honey Babe's affections are in, apparently. Doctor Who is a superhero. It's like a comedy. RTD protected the show, did you know, from Disney? And Jodie appeared again. She's selling that toxic town thing, isn't she? To say she is a top fan of Ncuti, even though she doesn't watch a show. And the show has to be relevant, she said. Yeah. Anyway, it should be a fun chat today. I think there's plenty to get our teeth into. So, welcome everyone there. Now, been a busy week already. I mean, I'm packing my bags for Belfast, and if you're there, please give us a text and I'll see you. But we did the Celestial Toy Box yesterday. It's not up of everybody's street. Not everybody collects them. Some people have had this stuff before. I was quite pleased, but if you haven't checked it out, please check that one out. We were certainly passionate about it, and Ryan in Belfast was certainly knowledgeable about it. We had the Davros Factor at 50 on Sunday. We weren't just eulogizing about Genesis and Davros. We were talking about the impact of Davros on the show and the impact of RTD on Davros. So please have a look at that one. Do email us on Gmail and DM me on X with your ideas, your topics, your suggestions, or if you want to join one of the panels, the more the merrier. It's an open channel in that way, okay? Just get your seat around the table. And with all of these streams going on, please check if you've subscribed. We are trying to get to 1,500 subs, and we're in the final 100 now. So please check, sub, repost, spread the word. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. So, great to see you all. Let's get everything off our chests today. Misses. And I suppose I better start with getting the gan on. So, James, he's our Zennial. He's certainly not my generation. Hiya, James.
You're right.
Here we go again. Do you know, a week passes and you think, oh, there might be one item to talk about. And then suddenly...
Yeah, I mean, I was scrambling around looking for something. And then like yesterday, it just like...
It's like my walk show on Friday, which won't be this Friday because I'm in Belfast. But at 1 minute, I'm thinking, can I find any walk stuff? And then suddenly, whoa, there's too much. So yes, it's going to be a busy one today. So I better shut my mouth and get moving. And we've got Leon. He was very popular on Friday night. Oh my God, I know everybody. I did ask him back and he was very polite and he said yes. So here he is. Hiya, Lee.
Hello, we've tri-generated.
Yes, try regenerating. How many pairs of trousers can we share?
I'm thinking of a Rolf Harris song that's probably not appropriate.
I mean, yes. I mean, I call it the Bigenerates. Yeah, neat little word pun. But the thing is, I sometimes have a tri-generate thing. But here we go. And I think me and you, Lee, are probably the same generation, aren't we?
Very similar, yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, Gen X.
That's it. But so we'll do a pincer movement on James.
Out.
Yeah. Yes, we own this show, if you don't mind, James. You know, it's our Doctor Who show.
Out comes our old-fashioned sanctimony, you know.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, you know, in our day.
Anyway, just to get us all going. I mean, I don't use this stuff, but I'm fascinated by people who use Lego.
That's great.
I know when I saw the Warriors Gate Lego, I don't understand Warriors Gate, but I do appreciate a bit of Lego. It might simplify it for me.
You must have a K9 Lego figure. I've never seen that before. I did not even know there was Doctor Who Lego. All my Legos are like Ferraris that you can probably tell.
I've got the 12th Doctor Lego set, you know, the TARDIS console. Picked that up for like I think it was like 30 quid or something. It usually goes for like ridiculous money, so it's quite lucky.
Oh, well, you can have your own little Adric Lego if you want.
I have not seen that. I really want to get that.
Isn't
I
that
know
great?
it's I showed the Davros one on Sunday. I don't know if there's some model makers actually just doing bespoke ones, to be honest. But I love the picture.
Oh, the Davos one. Now that sounds like it's got legs.
Well, yeah, you can choose. You can
I've
choose.
been up since 4. The puns are going to be flowing. Sorry.
Well, that's it. You can keep us going on that. But we do all like an action figure. And I know Lee, for example, yesterday was watching about the John Pertwee Third Doctor one. And even our Steven Moffat likes action figures, clearly. But I've got an update on that, Lee, by the way, from yesterday. This fella here, Edmund, he posted this morning and said he was doing the head sculptures for that character options. And I'm always fascinated by the amount of detail they put in. Look at this.
It's a great head sculpt, but I was looking at one of the reviews of someone with it in hand, the actual figure, and what they've done is they've not painted the face, so it's just that cast in that skin color plastic, but the eyes that they've painted are too big for the sculpt, so they look cartoonishly large, and it's such a shame because the actual head sculpt is actually really good and really fantastic, but they've just made the eyes a bit manga, quite honestly, if you look at it close up.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen comparisons.
There you
Here we go. Yeah, there's the comparison, everybody. So you can see that's what you're either buying into or deciding not to buy into. But
They painted over the eyelids, effectively, the eyelids.
And yes, the sonic screwdriver, if you've already got it, I think it's a bit of a moot point whether you'd want to just get an upgrade. I haven't got them, so of course I've ordered. But
well, I ordered one for myself, one for my friend, and another one to keep in the box because I think that's a good one to keep in the box. I'm not using in-box collector. I have all my figures on the shelf out of the box because I think really you want to enjoy them. You want to enjoy looking at them. I don't think you can through a window.
Yeah, I mean, so I came late to this because, as you know, I lived in Australia and all the models and that were being sold here, and I didn't even know what was happening. So I'm late to the
surprise. Well, this was a surprise release. So usually there's leaks or this is coming, that's going to be out, and this one just totally came out of nowhere. So well done them for keeping a lid on that one.
Yeah,
but I also found out that the actual sonic screwdriver sound chip has the Third Doctor sonic noise as the third click, and they got a 12th Doctor noise on the second click, and the Tom Baker stroke Matt Smith noise on the first click, which seems really strange to me. It's nice that they've got for the fourth click, we have to pull the thing 4 times, is the door from Inferno, which is a bit strange. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, so there you go. I mean, I'm like you. I've ordered 2. One I'll open, and one I'll keep in the box. And I don't know why I'm doing this. Is this like a legacy from a will or something? I'm not quite sure why I'm doing this. I mean, but sometimes I think being a fan, you don't actually know why you're doing it. It's almost irrational.
There is an irrationality to it. I think what it is you order it because you get so hyper excited because it's new, it's a third Doctor, it's a classic Doctor Who, it's something you're interested in, it's a figure that you're interested in, and then the buyer's remorse sinks in a bit later. I'm like, what have I done? What did I do that? But you're like, oh, you sort of justify it, head, don't you?
Yeah. Well, it gets us excited, especially the nostalgia. But are we all excited? I mean, I noticed this in one of the papers. The must-see TV to watch this spring from Doctor Who to all these other shows. So Ncuti Gatwa is back to spinners around space and time for more of the Doctor. As ever, the plot is being kept tightly under wraps. That's because there isn't one.
Yeah.
But we've had confirmation of some exciting guest appearances. Oh, yeah, goody.
So excited.
Yes, all the Americans and Australians and Canadians who've never heard of Rylan are so excited, as well as a brand new companion in the form of Radha Sethu's Belanda Chandra. Whoa, that's a mouthful. Strap in for more. Intergalactic. Now, the word is there, James.
One more like.
I mean, James, the word hijinks. As soon as I see the word hijinks, I think of Pixie and Dixie. I think of the cartoons or something.
Well,
Or
no.
you think, or you
word
think
jinx
of
wasn't the best thing about the last series either, was it?
But Jinx, I'm sorry, but these are the wrong descriptions for my Doctor Who. Hi, Jinx.
No, it sounds like a Felix advert.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like that particular drag queen on drugs.
Well, yes, yes, she'll be back. She'll be back. So there you go. I'll just show you that people are still putting out the hype out there. I'm not buying it at all. But we are here to debate some tasty topics. Moffat and RTD had a nice chit chat in there. Tardis, things were said, and we are here to debate them as well as Jodie later on. So, suppose we better have a good look at this. I mean, here we go. The TARDIS set is still intact the day they made that. The trouble is that it didn't seem to be intact when they made the trailer, and it was a drape. But there you go. I mean, I don't know what to think of it. From that angle, it looks sizable. I just don't know why they've got all those stupid ramps. That's all.
For a moment, I thought you'd put the wrong picture up. To me, that looks like the gents at Paddington Station. I mean, you got all the urinals around the side, and then in the middle, there's all the hand washing stuff.
Well, yeah, well, so they'll have a horrible smell as well. So, okay, right. So,
yeah, it's just a mess. I mean, how can you make something so minimalist look so damn messy and so big and so empty? Whilst I don't know, it's so weird. It's like, oh, because in this, I mean, we'll touch on it, I'm sure, in a bit. But you know, when he said, "Oh, I was looking at the classic TARDIS that you brought back,
yes,
in, the 12th Doctor's run," and I thought, oh, I like that. And then, oh well, maybe I should do something like that. And it was like, well, you kind of didn't. You took all the sort of things on the page, you know, like white or light grey and roundels, central column, blah blah blah, all the sort of list of things, but it's just not in the right order, or it's just not realized properly. It's so over the top and yet so underwhelming at the same time. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean that guy from CT Alpha, I prefer the original TARDIS. I mean, they reference it, don't they? That looks like something out of J.J. Abrams. Adrian Sherlock in Australia, generic TARDIS set, generic opening titles. It's bland as can be. I find it fascinating when these two talk to each other because they're suddenly. I don't know if RTD's in or Steven Moffat, because Steven Moffat clearly sits down and thinks, whereas RTD is like a kind of scattergram. He just kind of does it and then goes, I should have maybe done a white TARDIS. And when I saw yours, I thought, you think, oh, look, you need to do some thinking. You're called a showrunner.
But just saying as well that the central column, not the central column, the central console is a different color to the walls. So you got this very clinical white walls and this kind of cream off-white console, and it's just it clashes. I'm sorry, I have to say.
Yes, well, so we're going to go through what they said, folks, and there's some nice, easy opening gambits here. So the first one was they were waffling on, bigging each other up, really. They're mates, after all. TARDIS should look spacey on the inside, not quirky, they say. And, of course, I don't know if they were having a dig at the movie one, or they were having a...
With Regina Blades.
Oops, sorry.
All right. I mean, I didn't know if they were just having a dig. Do you know what I mean? What is a quirky TARDIS? What is their issue? They did rate the William Hartnell one, and its very whiteness as you walked in and its size, although it did diminish obviously for practical reasons. But the TARDIS should look spacey on the inside, not quirky. I'm trying to work out what because these have run the show for so long, and you think, well, what the hell's quirky?
Well, I mean, if you look at the original TARDIS consoles, from the 60s through to the early 80s, I'd say. I mean, they all look quite quirky. I mean, you had big, giant red buttons or a big red knob or, weird things that just look like they don't really belong on a console, you know, of any description, but it worked. That was quirky. It wasn't contrived. You know, you can see they were trying to add bits together to make it look like it was a functional computer bank, you know. But nowadays it's like, you know, a bicycle pump or a, you know, crystal Tardis that flips upside down, or, you know, whatever. Any old bit of bric-a-brac that they found in a junk shop, and they shove it on there.
I find it fascinating, James, that you know, like the original TARDIS, they had a food machine away from the TARDIS console, and RTD, because he wanted to do that little Wild Blue Yonder bit, needed the coffee machine on the TARDIS console. We know, keep your drinks away from your keyboard. Come on.
Just one little point, but by the movie, are you referencing the 60s in color 2 movies, or the TV movie?
Yeah, the 96 one.
The McGann one.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to guess, because, you know, they're you know, they're the power behind their, you know, this whole era, and you're trying to work out with every word, what are they getting at? So they now suddenly want the whiteness again after years of going dark and doing weird stuff, as Lee was listing, with bicycle bumps and digestive.
Maybe this is what they meant by white mediocrity.
Yeah,
it's all very possible. So anyway, that's our opening gambit, and then of course they move on, and of course Steven Moffat was saying that when they came back in 2005, RTD was nervous with Julie. And of course, you know, this is what happened in 63. They were nervous, they were unsure, they had to have steady, well-made decisions and hope that the series was taken up. Of course, I think that adversity always makes creative juices flow very well.
Well, exactly. I mean, you had back then you had a culture of people who are, you know, either conservative or, you know, Marxist in some case, you know, and they fought their corners, and, you know, you'd have that air of disagreement. And I don't get a sense of that from Russell T Davies. I was listening to some of his interview with Tennant earlier, and it was like, oh, you have a lot of conversations, don't you? You sort of have this loyalty from your team. I thought, yes, because it's ruled by fear. No one dares say no to me. And it's like, why do you think that is? Because it's one way, my way, or the highway. And I think that's the difference. You don't have a culture there where people are not afraid to go, I think that's a bad idea, or I think you should rein that in a bit, or you should not do that, you know. And I think that RTD2 particularly, I think RTD1, he was more reined in, because you know, it was all new, and, you know, he had to sort of doff his cap a bit. Here the gloves are off. His career is, you know, regarded as a great success, and he's very powerful, but you know, the emperor has no clothes, but no one's going to say that.
But it's like, I'm always impressed. I mean, that you don't see many now, but I'm always impressed over the years when I grew up, when you saw a politician who you can see their eyes light up when they are challenged and they have to prove themselves. I used to love, when I was a teacher, particularly at A-level, when the class stopped being subdued in the early days of September, and they started to say, well, that's not quite my view of this. And they would challenge you. And I'm sure my eyes must have lit up thinking, I'm not going to shoot you down. You are allowed to challenge. Of course you are. I'm dying to hear your opinion, and I'm going to come flying back as well. And we're going to have a fantastic creative debate. Now, it sounds to me as though RTD has gone way past that and doesn't really entertain that idea. And yet that's where people learn, and that's where, I don't know, you can go to some very interesting places if you're making a TV program.
Well, there's a difference between intelligence and ego. And I think an intelligent writer, intelligent showrunner, if you want to put it in that term, would encourage it and thrive on debate and discussion and listening to other points of view. But an ego doesn't matter how intelligent they are. It shows a sort of a lack of self-awareness, or perhaps an inferiority complex that cannot be questioned.
I sometimes think he does sound insecure. I don't know about you, James. I mean, I do sometimes. When RTD was talking to Steven Moffat, we've got a lot of quotes in a minute, folks. Don't worry.
I mean, what it is he's running by fear because he's afraid. He won't let any dissident voice.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I think. If I'm keeping up, I think it was Paul Richards who said it. Like, it used to have lots of different writers with different political views, and they were all allowed to say their piece. And now it's only RTD's opinion only.
Did you notice as well that when he had really good writers on, they only sort of appeared once or twice, and then they were gone. No sign of them ever again.
Rob Sheeman, Gareth Roberts,
Case in point, the Beast Below, whatever it's called. It was arguably one of the more successful stories, and never saw of him again. And I think that there's a lot of insecurity there, because I think if you're going to be writing as well as show running, and I think that's a big mistake, you're going to get very jealous of people who are perhaps more talented than yourself, and you don't like being shown, and therefore you are not going to be invited back. I think there's an element of that. I could be wrong, but that's how I feel. I've come across this mentality before.
Yeah, because all I can judge on, and it's on the outside, but I should know my writers and I can research them, which is when you look at 2005, a lot of them came from Big Finish and various areas because we had the wilderness years, but they were sci-fi and they were really embedded in the concepts. And he picked, hopefully, some of the better ones. But
look at what he's picked for his season 2.
Yeah.
You can't argue to me that these people are going to be better writers than him.
No, and this is what I mean. I've always argued Malcolm Hulke wrote The Avengers, Pathfinders, Crossroads, and Doctor Who. But he had, number one, a lot of experience of television writing at speed. He obviously, therefore, because he hadn't been sacked and kept getting given work, he knew the beats of what a viewer wanted. So therefore, a bit like Terry Nation with Genesis, he knew that in that first episode, he had about 6 Jeopardy moments that nowadays would have been the cliffhanger. But they keep it going. They know how to kind of integrate a plot. Of course, we had a bit of a eulogy here, of course, because they love each other. And of course, you did The Empty Child, you did The Girl in the Fireplace, you did Blink. The Girl in the Girl in the Fireplace, me and Hugh go on about, which is on the safeguarding front. All I'll say is it's problematic.
I didn't like that episode at all. I found it quite dull. I loved The Empty Child and I loved Blink, but Girl in the Fireplace, it was just, I mean, even without the context of supposedly being in a real life situation, it was just not a very good episode.
It's just that he's a man of influence. It's almost a bit with him and Amy Pond again. It's 11th Hour and Girl in the Fireplace, and yet the same writer, of course, where you've got a young girl who looks up to an older man, and then she grows up, and then it's not good. It's not good.
She grows up.
11th Hour, on the other hand, is one of my favorite episodes, possibly my favorite episode of Modern Who.
I agree. It's just it has got a few. One or two issues in it, though.
But don't forget, she also grows up in the space of 45 minutes, and the Doctor is then, by the end of it, kissing the girl that he met 45 minutes ago, who was, what, 5, 6, 7, I can't remember.
Yeah, it for her, she's grown up over the many years, as we all understand what growing up's like. But for the Doctor, as you've just said, in a way, it's a shame we can't get into his head, which is, this is Ron, because she was 5 years old.
But that makes quite decent Doctor Who, because it brings home to us that he's an alien. He doesn't necessarily think like us.
Yeah, that's true.
But I can't see why he'd want to faff or mess around with somebody who's just been born in the universe, basically.
A mayfly, basically all human beings are mayflies. They're there and they're not there anymore.
I mean, I've stated this on the show many times many times before. I don't want the Doctor being sexualized at all. I don't care whether it's gay, straight, bi, or whatever. I don't want the Doctor being sexualized at all.
Absolutely.
So here we go. I mean, this will get us going. So this is what everyone's tuned in for, really, which is what did Steven Moffat and RTD actually say about Doctor Who? What was their vision for Doctor Who, if I want to be highfalutin? So, and I've cut it together because obviously they went on for a while and we all have a life. But anyway, remember saying these words? You said, I think there could be 10 years in this, but I'll be long gone by then. Yeah, it's all the waffle about RTD. You've come back. Yeah, okay. Isn't it funny? But then it's the bit in the middle. This is RTD speaking. The Doctor is a sort of in the superhero genre. In a way, he's a sort of, well, not the same as the other ones. I mean, it's just there, and it's amazing how unchanged he's been. When he said superhero, and a lot of us who are critical of the present Doctor Who say, please don't do Space Jesus, but they do. But I'm sorry, come on, we've all read the books, whether it's Target books or some fictional books about non-fictional books about Doctor Who in the early days. Anti-hero was the description, not superhero.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just don't. No, you go.
No, I was all I was about to spit out there was it's quite hard to debate someone that you're agreeing with.
Yeah, well, big love.
Yeah, anti-hero is the right word, because that he's not a bad person. He always ends up doing what is right or trying to do what is right, but he doesn't like seek out danger. And you know, he's not a superhero. He's an alien with technology. A superhero is someone who has like supernatural powers. I mean, I would argue in the same way that neither Batman nor Iron Man are superheroes. They're people who've got technology. The Doctor just happens to be alien. That doesn't make him a superhero.
No, and it's interesting how he opts to use that term superhero. I think that just sounds incredibly confused. You know, it just doesn't fit. The whole reason why people love Doctor Who and may not like other types of science fiction or other genres, or you know, because Doctor Who does stand out very differently from Star Trek, Star Wars, or the rest of it, it's because he's not a superhero. He's not your butch macho, you know, flying with a cape or beating people up with, you know, whatever strength or superpowers or anything like that. He uses his mind. You know, he's more of a detective, if anything, you know, or it's more of a you know, just a wanderer who. I
mean, that's exactly what they did with the third Doctor era. He was a detective. It was like the Master was based on Variety and the Doctor was based on Sherlock Holmes.
Absolutely, you know, and the original Doctor was based on, you know, Professor Quatermass. So you've got that kind of amalgamation of archetypes, and superhero to me is an American archetype. But Doctor Who, as an adventurer, as a Quatermass, or as a Sherlock Holmes, those things are quintessentially very British. You know, from the British Empire days, you know, you would have that kind of role model, I guess. You know, he's a scoutmaster. He's a a detective, an adventurer. You know, or one of those. But
the thing is, he was also things, you know? he was that classic. And there's an item tonight later on when we compare James Bond, and Doctor Who, because the Daily Express was having an article about both being destroyed franchises, and so we'll kind of get to that kind of element too. But the Doctor to me was almost that kind of modest underdog. He, as you said, he appealed to us because he didn't have all the glitz and the glamour and the bravado and the show off and almost that diva behavior and that kind of, I am here, I need my own logo, I need my own this, I need my own, you know, underpants. It was never any of that. And yes, as you said, James, he doesn't have these superpowers in that way. He's just an alien who's not quite the same as human. And he's got this amazing machine that takes him into different places. And he just has a sense of right and wrong. That's the only bit there. But I love the underdog bit because basically, and it does fall into that British thing because it's so not American that you would find that the British male character, Doctor, is in a real pickle on some planet. And he has to kind of work out whether he can make some little gadget. It's very little. It's very the repair workshop, isn't it? It's very you know,
he's a scientist, you know.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, he's a scientist who got bored living on the home planet and decided to bugger off and explore and to have a lease of life. He's just an adventurer, a madman in a box. I think was a pretty decent description.
Yeah,
I don't think he's mad, but he's eccentric, yes. But eccentric by human standards. I don't know about anyone else. But
I find it funny that we're having 2 series of fantasy. He's waffling on about the Doctor being a superhero, and they just don't want to say this is could be hard science fiction. And like you said, Madman in a Box and Mad Auntie Mel and all the rest of it. Anybody who's serious about what they're good at, because remember, Mel is supposed to be a brain box with computers, so of course she has to be mad. I think they're saying geeks are mad, and science fiction scientists and geniuses are mad. So
because he doesn't understand science, and that's very particular. You know, for a man who prides himself on being a Welsh man who made it good and went to Oxford. I mean, why didn't you go down the pub and speak to people from the science department, you know, and learn a bit more? If you're that interested in science fiction, I would have thought that. And it's another thing he said in this discussion with Moffat. You know, we didn't have any memos or any sort of information from the 60s about what they were talking about back in the day. And like when, you know, Verity was talking to Sydney, I was thinking that, why didn't you ask her when she was, if you met Verity Lambert, you could have said, what did you got? How did you, you know, how did you produce the show? How did you work? You know, what was said during that time? I just think, sure, you know, if you were that invested, you would have actually have asked them whilst you had her with you.
Well, I guess because
I don't know so much about the modern stuff, but like what I would call proper Star Trek, the original series and the 90s stuff, they actually hired scientific advisors to make science fiction. Those are the words, science fiction,
but James,
more believable.
James, you've made a good point there. We had Jerry Davis, we had scientific advisors, and now we have intimacy coordinators. That's where we've moved. That's where we've moved. That just tells you everything. We don't need a Jerry Davis who tells you about cybernetics. We need somebody who tells you where to touch on the leg. That's what it's all about now.
Well, Douglas Adams would meet, you know, his friends down the pub are, you know, all walks of life, but a lot of them are sort of physicists and such and mathematicians, and they would have endless drunk discussions about science, and it would show up in his work. You know, it would show up in his City of Death, or it would show up in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You know, you had, as I said in our last stream, Brendan, was, you know, you had a lovely picture of Terrence Dicks holding a science magazine, clutching in his arms, and these people took it seriously, and I just don't think these people can be bothered today to actually spend any time at all.
I think it's
not that they can't be bothered, it's that they actively don't want to. They're using their platforms to push agendas rather than to tell stories.
Absolutely.
If they're not trying to tell stories, they don't need to make their stories believable.
I think they're incompetent as well, quite honestly.
They say in the TARDIS travels, don't they? And Lee picked up on it, which is they say, you know, they said it was all third person. They said, nobody asked Verity about this. Nobody asked the right question. And as you say, Lee, but they met them. And I have to say, whether I was the latest producer of Doctor Who, all those years later, when you're in the company of Verity Lambert, I can guarantee, and I'm sure you'd be the same, I would have been asking all the questions that way. And I would not have been wanting to talk about what I'm making now. And of course, her humility. And she's the one who had all those amazing, you know, Minder and everything. She's got a great track record. And she was, you know, she fought her way in a man's world. And I have to say, I'd want her to have talked more. But her modesty probably held her back.
I can imagine that, you know, showing Verity around, it would have been talking about what we've done, what we're doing. And I can't imagine it. Because he made it quite clear in this little video, this chat, that these questions he's asking now about, you know, there were no memos or what they were talking about with, you know, her and David Whitaker, for example, why didn't you ask her? Oh, probably because you're too busy blowing your own trumpet. Like,
Yeah, and you weren't interested. I mean,
yeah.
if you don't ask it's called curiosity, isn't it? It's a simple thing. It's the first sign you see in a kid. If they start asking questions, intellectual curiosity, brilliant. Now, if RTD and Steven Moffat, the geeks of Doctor Who, when they've got the person who was at the start, don't ask her questions, it's because they're not interested.
They're not interested. I see right through a lot of this. Yeah, they talk about how Doctor Who was important when they were kids, but I think it's, as I said, well, I touched on this last time, was I think they're embarrassed by Doctor Who. I just don't think that they brought Doctor Who back because it was their favorite geeky show when they were kids. I think they brought it back because I thought, how can we? Because when he was talking about the David Tennant interview, he was talking about he went to a teenage gay group or something, and they were all Star Trek fans. It's back in the 90s. What he was saying, I don't know, but he knew that there was some sort of science fiction thing with young gay men or whatever. So he thought, oh, hello, they would have been into Doctor Who if Doctor Who was still on. So I think this is sort of the seed of it. So even there, you see the connection right there between LGBTQ and Doctor Who in his mind. But I think ultimately he wanted to bring it to make it look cool, to make it a success, so he could say, well, I brought Doctor Who back, but he never really, I don't think, intended to bring it back as it was, but as something new, something that he wouldn't be ashamed of.
But here we
are.
He's missed. Again, he hasn't been anywhere near teenagers and schools. The kids find science and maths at the moment extremely cool. Sorry?
I wouldn't put money on that.
No. But I know, but you know what I'm saying. With almost 30 years experience, the stem cells, they are finding, they all want to do the science and the maths at high level. They really are geared into it. Now, remember when we were younger and Tomorrow's World was on, there's that type of audience, that young audience where we said, tell us about the future, tell us about science. Whereas I was just seeing today again, because I'd done my Davros one thing the other day, the BBC put up 50 years of Davros, and you see that clip from Stolen Earth and the second episode, the Journey's End thing, and the way you defeated Davros and all those Daleks was the Dr. Donner blancmange, and while we're in the dungeon, the basement where Davros is a prisoner pet, the new kind of Dr. Donner twiddles some knobs and she says, I've done that. And I'm thinking, what, the Daleks' flaw was left in their basement where Davros was? Really? That makes no sense. And of course, that's science. Well, it's not even science. That's mumbo jumbo.
It's Deus Ex Machina. Know, it's the magic reset button, or it's the thingy jiggy bob. The MacGuffin that did it. And there's no thought about it. Now, Classic Who, at least he had, even if it was mumbo jumbo or reversing the polarity of the neutron flow, it was something that sounded feasible. It sounded plausible, and that's the thing. If you can't even be bothered to explain the process or how it works, even if it's utter nonsense, it has to sound at least plausible.
The best example, I'll say this one, and you can trump me if you want, was Chris Boucher in Robots of Death when he explained the Tardis with the two boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolute simplicity, but it was an attempt. I mean, the TARDIS does not make sense in real science, but it was a fascinating way of doing it.
Well, what you could argue was, even though it's complete nonsense, but it was sold with so much conviction, and because it's some kind of science which is like magic to us, it's like Asimov, wasn't it? Was it Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, who said that in the future science would science in the future would look like magic to us. You can get away with that explanation by making it so profound, that it's complete nonsense, but it's so profound looking that you think, well, you just don't understand it because you're a human being. But we know. There's an attempt, an attempt to explain it.
So here's another bit. If everyone hasn't watched it yet, the TARDIS Travels, where Steven Moffat and RTD talk about their companions, their doctors, their Tardis, their take on Doctor Who. So, of course, it got tasty. So here's another bit. Obviously, RTD plays the game and keeps saying he, she, male or female, because we've had Jodie.
But wasn't it funny they never said they or their? Or,
yes, they didn't, because they can't.
Male or female.
But this is RTD again, folks. But that fundamental explorer, scholar, friend, joker, that's the extraordinary quality about him, is he has this maximum dialogue, maximum power dialogue. It's very much written like a comedy. You look, the scholar and explorer we've actually mentioned already. I'm not too sure about the friend. I mean, yes, he looks, he keeps an eye on his companions. He certainly bails them out. The friend thing, I think you're pushing your luck, because in classic Doctor Who, they just got on with it. The Joker thing, I'm sorry, there was maybe one line in a whole story from old Doctor Who. I didn't see jokes and comedy, but this is again, he's a superhero. It's like a comedy. He's a joker. I'm sorry. I think they are minimizing what the power of him, really.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I was watching this earlier on when you sent me the link to it, because I hadn't seen it. But it was interesting. He was talking about how he doesn't like trying to write a particular character for the Doctor. It's always the same character.
Yeah.
And everything else is ephemera. So sort of disposable nonsense, or, you shouldn't really write to the Doctor, the particular iteration you've got. But isn't it interesting, though, that he was the one, RTD is the one who wrote Honey, Babes in the script for Ncuti Gatwa. And so I thought that came from Ncuti Gatwa, but it didn't, according to him. So that was interesting to me. And it was like, or if I hadn't written it in, I would have expected him to say it anyway.
Well, what was worse about that, Lee and James, is that added to that, Steven Moffat also had written it into the script. And so our two powerful showrunners have both given the 15th Doctor all these affectations,
which they said is ephemera and they don't do, which is a contradiction.
Yeah, within 2 lines they'd contradicted each other. And yet they said the Doctor never changes, that you can write, you write your scripts, and the Doctor, they both agreed that you see the rushes and then you adapt your script to the Doctor. I think they've done that with every Doctor to a degree, let's be honest, because we all know that Robots was a very pertwee story, blah, blah, blah. But apart from that, I don't think I detected in classic Who lines like that. Give me the loving and all that sort of stuff. So there's something about our culture, our society in 2024-25, where we seem to want, as we know, I mean, I think I just see it for a mile off, which is affectations and stuff like that. I smell a rat. I smell a problem. I don't believe it. Can you get to the nut? I'm a Yorkshireman. Can you just tell me it straight and not put ice in all over it? Because I don't believe the ice in. Take it off. I mean,
the opposite of all that honey baby stuff, of course, is you can still find in what I would still call modern Who. I can't remember what the episode was called. I think it was the 10th Doctor. Like, we were in a library, books, the greatest weapons in the world.
Yeah.
Meaning knowledge is power, which
well, you'd hope he'd be.
Which I actually think comes from Batman Forever, but okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at that, then now he wouldn't even reference libraries. I imagine he would reference TikTok, and I think he kind of did with that episode in season 1 with the people on that social media thing.
Yeah, that was.
It's debased. Doctor Who is now debased to the lowest common denominator.
And there was a pre-warning to that in actually, I think, late in the Moffat era, because the companion was Bill Potts, and they ended up in this kind of where everybody talked in emojis. It's like this is like some kind of, this is coming from further up in some establishment, maybe the BBC, it's the intentional dumbing down of the audience.
Infantilization. Look, there's different ways to look at this, James. One way is the quality of the people in charge of these media organizations have gone down, a bit like our politicians' quality's gone down. I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of cowardice going on. There are not many politicians of caliber and integrity and great conviction. They all test out the next opinion poll and then switch. I don't hold much water with the current crop of politicians, and neither do I media executives and certainly writers. You say Robert Holmes, Terence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke. Just look at that kind of Dennis Potter. Just look at all of those, and then look at what's getting delivered now. And yes, there's one or two exceptions, but you do see an awful lot of writing that gets on TV has been gone through a tick box exercise, has had to pass a lot of strange exams to be chosen. And by the time you get to it, it's just a story about somebody who's got some melanin. Apart from that, I don't see anything different. There's nothing of interest. Drama has to engage and has to have something there where you go, oh, wow. And it's the tension. Half the time, we're not allowed tension. We have to just be shown stuff. I just think the quality, like you say, James, has gone downhill. But there is that other element where you're thinking, is this a deliberate policy as well, though, that we can't have Doctor Who doing anything dangerous? You know, we have to have safe spaces for the kids. I don't know. I mean, is this... So now... I've said it how many times? Genesis of the Daleks could not be in season 2 because it's just too highbrow.
Well, I think what it is, you've got a BBC interfering in everything, in every aspect through its culture. I think the biggest mistake the BBC ever did was to create that, you know, that what do you call it? The BBC. What do you the thing? You know, they wrote down a
charter.
Charter. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that was once you start putting things down in writing as a cultural epithet, you have to stick to this. It's very restrictive, and I think that, you know, with the addition of the DEI stuff and all the other stuff that we probably aren't even really totally or fully aware of, has it further clamped down on that. But what I think is you can't set the writer free anymore. The writer is not allowed to think on their own. And if you look at Classic Who always wrote slightly above the age that they were writing to, you know, like that, like intelligent 10-year-olds. And so you, as a 4-year-old watching Destiny of the Daleks, as I was, you know, and not fully quite understanding, but wanting to know more, it lit a fuse in my brain that was like, I have to watch this. I want to know more, and I want to understand who this crazy bug-eyed grinning man is, and, you know, and who this guy in this wizened face and chariot is sitting there being all Machiavellian, which I wouldn't have understood what Machiavellian was, but it made me want to learn more. You know, it piqued my interest, and I think that now, rather than trying to raise you up or to make you engage, it's there to wash over you. It's generic entertainment. It's like,
Lee,
look, bright colours and flashing lights.
Lee, I mean, we're all Doctor Who fans here. Let's list an episode, The Crotons. You've got episodes where we are becoming, they want us to be unchallenging, uncritical, just accepting, compliant. They're turning us into the people in the blooming Crotons.
Yeah, pretty much. But isn't it funny, you know, you look at how fandom has devolved on social media to the point that you've got all these people who put pictures of their favorite Doctor in their little profile pictures, but they behave in a way that is more reminiscent of the Cybermen. You know, you will think like us or you will be cancelled. You know, that's where we're at. That's how I think it seems to be. It's so underhanded and subliminal how this has infected Doctor Who, that you've got actual fans of the show behaving more like the villains, and they don't realise that they have fallen foul to this kind of very authoritarian problem.
I shouldn't be in shock. I am less in shock now. But when I put a thumbnail up on certain Facebook pages and it's a question, and we will debate the answer. I'm always intrigued how so many people are so triggered by the question. They are threatened by the question.
There's a concerted effort to quash any debate or discussion, which is very anti-intellectual. It's very dominating, authoritarian, and it's quite frightening that you've got a group of people, or maybe even a whole generation. I don't want to diminish, or use a generic generalization, about all this generation believe like this, because I know that's not true. However, you've got a large number of people who are very loud, probably a minority, I'd say, but they're very loud about it, who want to control what you think, what you say, how you behave, and they will sit there in moral judgment of you. And I think it's like, well, that would be well and good if you had a bit of life experience before you first.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think it's really important that this is not like we're soap opera fans discussing the latest episode of EastEnders. We are discussing science fiction, and science fiction readers and viewers are normally more challenging and more critical, and don't like oppression and don't like the mind control element,
which the Doctor would fight against. And I find it quite interesting that we talk about how Doctor Who it needs to be relevant. Science fiction is always relevant because that's the nature of science fiction, but it's not relevant in the way that, say, a soap opera is relevant. So you talk about today's issues in a today kind of setting. You can talk about today's issues, but in a much cleverer, futuristic science fiction context, which makes you actually think about the way we are moving as a society, the way we're headed, how things can work out or how they can go horribly wrong. And that's where the drama is. But you don't make it relevant by making it hip and trendy to what's happening today, as in it'll all be forgotten tomorrow. It's making the small stuff this overwhelming big thing which we all need to focus on. But you're missing the bigger picture about how authoritarianism works and how belief in something, however virtuous you think it is, can lead to tyranny. But that is something you can explore in science fiction. Sorry?
Which is what they're practicing. It's happening.
You should always. The whole point is that's what I mean. The safe space thing and all these things is also run because you always. I mean, when I was at university, you had speakers who you didn't agree with, but you'd go down there and you'd ask them questions. You know what I mean? You'd challenge them. Now they're cancelled, and you're thinking that's not education. That's not intellectual curiosity. You should delight in debate, and you should delight in being questioned back, make you think. You spark back, and that's what I'd like in our Doctor Who debates. It shouldn't be fans saying, sorry, don't like your channel because I don't like your view. You go, well, come on.
You should be frightened by these. You should be frightened by these people because these people are going to be in charge tomorrow. Well, and the thing is, if they are unable or incapable of having debates or discussions with you because they are so committed to their beliefs, they cannot be swayed, they cannot listen to it, and if you look at the definition of the word bigot, it's someone who has the inability, unwillingness to listen to another person's point of view. That's what bigotry is. That's where it all stems from. And if you cannot listen to someone who disagrees with you and cast them into the pits of hellfire because they don't agree with you, you're not necessarily going to be the good guy. Because I think you're underserving yourself at least, and at worst, you're committing acts which could lead to serious oppression of other people and suppression.
So I mean, I'm having that issue like personally since I've started being more vocal about my own views. A lot of people who are in that camp, they won't even have a discussion. I'm just wrong, and you can't say like you agree with something that they don't agree with, and you can't say that you agree with something they don't agree with. They won't have a discussion. They will shout you down and they will point fingers, and instead of trying to defend you, they will analyze what you're saying and look for gotchas.
Well, I've had several years of this, so you know,
I've only had about 18.
The reason is
I've had death threats, death wishes, you name it.
What's
all
happened
because
is,
you can't agree to disagree. You know?
What's happened is people don't listen to a paragraph or more of debate or sentence. What they do now is they listen to a word. They shoot on a word quite early on. In other words, adding to what Lee said about bigotry, it's prejudice. You prejudge based on one word, and then you go down some sort of tangent of an argument without actually listening to the context and the whole kind of argument. An argument is a whole list of points. And instead, they listen to a word and they go, I don't like that word. And you think, oh, let's get over that. Now, getting back to a bit more on Doctor Who, which, I mean, why the hell are we in this area talking about this? Because they've brought it to our Doctor Who show. That's what's
happened. They've dragged it through our cat flap.
Yeah. So this bit was when Steven Moffat and RTD were talking about their companions. And they got into this debate that you have to have a modern companion. And because that person is our guide as a viewer. Yeah, we know that one. And they said, even though they liked Victoria Waterfield and Jamie McCrimmon, that sort of thing, but it doesn't work. He tried the Victorian Clara and he said he was obviously having to check himself. And then, you know, they were waffling on at the end about you have to, as writers, write from the heart. So your heart's going to be with somebody modern. They're forgetting the humanity element.
Yeah.
You know, humanity in all the centuries, you can see the same traits. Of course you can. Mothers, fathers, love, compassion, loyalty, that sort of thing. That's not a new thing. But this is what we're facing in this cultural war at the moment, which is we're the best generation that's ever been on this planet. And we are going to look down on the history of all those other humans who...
Well, Victorians are problematic, you know, that's why. But I think it's very interesting that, you know, they think modern day women are, you know, the only way that you can see this story unfold through their eyes. Then why do you write them to be such insufferable characters? You know, they start off okay, and then towards the end, they're just like...
Lee,
finger wagging.
Insufferable.
Lee, what's worse is these modern women... right, okay, great. They're given the voice and all the rest of it, and Victorian women, it might be more problematic, blah, 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 blah. But these modern women that New Who write, in lots of cases, are very sexual. It's all about love. It's all about, I want the Doctor, or I want this. That doesn't make the women look better. It just diminishes them as well. You know, Zoe... in the 60s, she was a scientist. Liz Shaw in the early 70s. Yeah, we're going back that far. There were good characters because there were women who were bright.
Okay, let's go back further. Is it farther or further?
Go for it.
Either.
Let's go a longer way back than that and say Zoe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Zoe or Barbara. I mean... But this is what I find funny. Right, okay, let's look at the original TARDIS crew. And you know, they said they didn't... nobody asked the questions of Verity Lambert. Right, well, let's ask this question. You had two middle-aged teachers. Now, no kid at school, no younger kid goes, oh, I really relate to teachers. No. So that doesn't work, this idea that it has to be somebody you can understand. And then obviously you had an unearthly child, an alien Susan. So, yeah. And I know she looked like a teenager, but we all know she was more than that. So, sorry, this logic you're applying, Steven Moffat and RTD, does not work.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
And I would say as well, you know, if you want to look at female companions, strong female companions of the Doctor, I think Barbara is probably the best companion you've ever had, because I think she was intelligent, obviously a teacher. She had feminine wiles, which is nothing to be ashamed of. But she carried herself well. She tried to
and she stood up to the Doctor
She stood up to the Doctor. She also stood up to the Aztecs. You know, her own life.
That's the serial I'm referring to.
Yeah.
She went against the Doctor's wishes and tried to change history.
Yeah. And it's very interesting.
She was strong enough to do what she thought was right, even though he had the power. He was the only person who had the power to get her home, and she still did what she was right. That is a strong character. That is a well-written, well-acted, strong character.
But Barbara, can you imagine? This is the nonsense that we're having to humour. That if Barbara's character, seriously, if she was brought back, and I know she's not here and it's a shame, but if she was able to be brought back, like, well, I was nearly said hopefully Susan, she would have to change her attitudes because she's from the early 60s. And I'm sorry, but that's such a bad time. It's a dark time. It's a dangerous time. These people were, they had so many...
Oh, that's so backwards. Oh, yeah.
I mean, never mind Victorian, the 60s. I mean, you know, sorry.
Oh, yeah, with all their love everybody, peace, you know.
But this is
female rights.
Fill out with some exotic herbs.
But this is what I mean. We've got so obsessed. We've got so obsessed with this.
Nazi, weren't they?
Yeah. Identity and labels. We've got so obsessed with it that you're not seeing the common humanity element, which is what science fiction was always good at.
Well, look at Leela. You know, she was a savage, and she was a very consistent character in terms of her sort of on a learning curve, and that was quite, you know, the sort of doctor and student, which we saw with Bill a bit later on, which kind of worked. But I think with the Clara situation, a lot of people, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and you know, it's quite a popular opinion that the Victoria Clara would have made a much more compelling character to travel in the TARDIS than the one we got. And I totally agree. And I think
they couldn't be bothered to write her properly.
It's a failure of imagination. It is a failure of imagination that they could not write a 19th century
it's a
female
failure
character.
of skill. I think everybody has an imagination. It's a failure of skill, and it's a failure of desire, and it's a failure of commitment. I mean,
I can agree with that.
Well, Tim, I mean, I know the thread's been alive, and I've been flashing your quotes up. I haven't used them up verbally yet, so I apologise for that. But Tim here says, modern women on TV are like modern men on TV. They are vessels for the writers to pass on what they think are important. I tell you what, I'm not too sure. I mean, how much TV do I watch now? Because let's face it, we're all losing the faith. But I remember Helen Mirren doing Prime Suspect, and that was, and Jill Gascoigne doing The Gentle Touch, and you saw two strong women, but you got the warts and all, that it was a struggle and it was hard, and actually that was writing for a woman lead. I think, yes, a lot of women nowadays, they seem to make them, I don't know, they almost turn them masculine, as in they've got to be successful in the same way, almost behave brusque in the same way, and it's almost a stereotype. And you're going, I don't think you're understanding women, actually. I mean, I don't know. I just, for women to have got to the top, they will have done certain things that are different to, you know, it's just mad.
I've noticed as well, when I wanted to make a custom Barbara figure in the character option scale, and I'm looking, sort of trying to find the right sort of female body template that I can use, and it's impossible. And the reason why is because every single female character that mostly, not all, but mostly, apart from like Perry or whatever, all wear boots. They all wear over boots, and I find that quite interesting. You know, it's there's no sort of dresses, there's no feminine garb at all. It's all very kind of hyper masculinized in many ways, and I think you underserve women by removing their femininity, which is saying that women aren't, you know, by being feminine, you're not strong enough, so you have to be more like a man.
I didn't feel like the Jodie Whitaker costume worked, because I didn't think it wasn't working right. Anyway, I'll just get through a few of the thread here, because they've been very patient. They're lovely. Peter Harrington, Barbara and Ian were perfect companions and a fab relation to the viewing audience. But I have to say, Peter, my Doctor Who twin, of course, but a kid wouldn't say, "Oh, I relate to them." It's just their teacher.
They outlived Susan, on screen.
Yes, yeah, they were more.
I think they were probably looked up to a lot more. I think because kids back then had a bit more deference back then.
yeah, that went. So Sydney,
I'd like to just go back to that last one a little bit. We've been talking about how strong that Barbara was as a companion, because she stood up for her own beliefs and she would fight against the Doctor to do what she thought was right. Ian did exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Ian was a badass.
Yeah. Well, you've got Sydney Rough Diamond. The Doctor was practically a companion when Clara. Am I a good man? Am I a good man? Oh, I hated that. That was just the start of really diminishing the Doctor.
Well, is that Clara making him feel absolutely undermined and questioning himself? It goes to show you how toxic she was.
Oh, I know. I don't. Tim, if Barbara were brought back now, it'd be like the first Doctor's return. Exactly. That's what I'm. Yeah, I know. And that's wrong. That is wrong because Barbara stood her ground. She was good. She was Donna Noble before time because when everyone waffles on about the fires of Pompeii, Barbara was doing this in the 60s.
Yeah. Sarah
would do it, have I got the right? And she's going, will you put them wires together, Doctor? Away, I'm sorry, but we've had a lot of companions 50 and 60 years ago who were really strong female characters. And it's just this nonsense diminishing of the past and rewriting of the past that we have to kick back on.
Yeah, because I think that we have too many modern day companions now. They all have to be of the time. I mentioned Zoe earlier. She was from far in our future. She was a normal human girl, but far from our future, who knew all about all this tech that was kind of almost in the same league as Time Lord. And that is the kind of companion that I want.
What about? Heather's just said it here. Then James, to add to that, what about Adric? we could have a lad from East Space.
Well, Adric was, in retrospect, he wasn't as bad as I remember, but again, it was that was the target audience at the time, intelligent boys who are a bit geeky or whatever. I think that was quite a considered approach to a companion. This is the audience, which was at the time, with the rise of, Tennant particularly, which became a bit of a thirst trap for younger ladies and men. But it was aimed at bringing that audience in. So already knew who was engineering its audience than rather sort of addressing the audience that they knew that they already had automatically, And I think it's okay for that because most lads will identify with the Doctor generally, I think, and a lot of girls will identify being the companion because it's with so then they can travel with the Doctor. That's the general sex psychology behind it, isn't it? But I just think they leaned into that a bit too heavily to the point that when you've got these middle class white men of a certain age trying to be down and hip with the multicultural hip trendy youth of today, trying to write these very superfluous kind of hip moment, politically motivated minded, socially aware female characters. And I think that they listen too much to a lot of hectoring behind the scenes of how it should be done, and it just turned into a mess because they're trying to placate a certain mindset whilst delivering it in a very sort of bungled and ill-considered way. And I think that they just succeeded in only making these companions come across as quite domineering and hectoring and
I want the sexual dynamics gone. I want all that gone. I had a problem. I mean, Sydney Rough Diamond mentions Nissa. I mean, we have had alien women who have held their own. She was always seen as younger. She was cramped out because there were 3 others, and that was the problem there. So RTD and Steven Moffat discussed that you can only really have modern companions. You can hear from our panel, and I can see from the thread that's again very reductive and actually diminishes the world, our universe. I mean, isn't it funny?
Well, you have all of time and space to choose from.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. Marketing-wise, James, they want the whole universe. They want to broaden it and go global.
I hate that word.
And yet
I know it's an official word, universe.
Oh.
I think it's a metic.
And it's a stolen word as well. Someone else created it, and now trademark.
Now listen, you two, I'm not having it. Can I just point out Russell T Davies returned to Doctor Who to protect it amid a Disney deal. He is the protector of.
He's the one who gave it to Disney. What the hell?
So this was in the Radio Times, folks, and we are going to get.
Disney hated it. Come on.
So we are going to get to the point. I know I've seen some people earlier in the thread talking about, the gossip about whether they're thinking about a new showrunner and everything. So we'll get to that, but it's all logical. This. So RTD returned to Doctor Who to protect it amid Disney deal. He did it for free, no wages, no pension. Amazing bloke. All right. So RTD has said that one of the reasons, the other one was money and legacy. He decided to return to Doctor Who for his second stint at the helm was to protect the show during the early days of its partnership with Disney. Right. Let's just go into the logic. Davies, blah, 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 was revealed as Chris Chibnall's successor in a shock announcement back in 2021, blah, 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 around a year before news emerged of a deal with Disney+. But speaking to David Tennant, the podcast that Lee's been talking about, Davies admitted that discussions about a move to a big streaming service had been ongoing before he decided to rejoin the series, okay?
Because he was in trouble.
Yeah, there was already a move from the BBC to shift it to a streamer, he said. I kind of thought it would need protecting, and they very honestly said to me, we're going to need a producer who can deal with 1,000 executives and tell them all to shut up. Oh, sorry, I've added that bit. Pressed on why the BBC had felt the show would need a cash injection from a streamer to keep going, Davies added that's what they wanted. It's not just that that's the world we're in now. And he mentions, of course, Stranger Things and Star Wars. Now, I'll just get through this, folks, and we'll comment on all the elements of it. And of course, I noticed a few articles now always seem to finish with, there have been rumours recently that the Doctor Who series is cancelled, but it's incorrect, blah, blah, blah. So, Radio Times doing its job as per usual. So, he protected Doctor Who. He came back to put a kind of handrail around it, to put our lovely Ark in Space bubble wrap around it, and that's why Sutek came back as a dog, and that's why Mel came back as mad, and that's why and that's why we had a bite. I have to say, when you watch that Davros, all those clips from the BBC again, I was just flicking through. Like I said, when you get to Stolen Earth, you realise that how many times has RTD played with regeneration, which nobody else did? The Watcher was, I suppose, the most out there. You've got the Bigeneration, and you've got the Dr. Donna mishmash, and the hand and all this stuff. And I've grown my hand back, Space Jesus. It's just too much faffing, playing around with, and actually changing the whole canon. So he protected it by completely changing it, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, if this is his idea of protecting the show, God knows what he would do if he actually went out of his way to destroy it. It's remarkable, really. It's all spin.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been excellent if Tennant's hand didn't regenerate and he had like a prosthetic hand, like say Barrett from Final Fantasy VII?
He can put it under the console, so if he's feeling a bit randy,
Or the sonic screwdriver could actually be his new prosthetic hand, and you've got more representation there, haven't you?
Well, go full Luke Skywalker, have a robotic hand that can open locks and things.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
We've got a lot of cynicism in the thread. How very dare you? If you were in my class, I'd have to tick you off. No, I wouldn't. So you've got here Archer Collin, as I saw somewhere else. Protected it from what? Success and popularity? My Roku. Protect it from what? Modern girl boss Disney princesses?
Well, I think what it is, you've got a situation where if this has been sort of floated around for a while during the Chibnall era, it smacks to me of this is why they made it super duper uber duper woke, was because Disney was super uber duper duper woke back then. So they thought, if we make it uber super duper woke, they're going to really want this at Disney because it's going to fit in with their with their ethos. So I think they went down this road, and then just as it was like coming to an end, it was like, look, ta-da, we got this super duper uber duper Doctor Who, and at Disney, and we're not doing that anymore.
And I know. Talk about being behind the curve.
Yeah, chasing the current thing.
Never do.
Always too late because it doesn't last.
Don't chase fads. It's a bit like the last one in the class when you were a kid. If you didn't have a lot of money, and the other, the ones who always had money, and when it was a school disco or something, they had the latest stuff on, and you were the one who was still in flares when it was now back. You were always behind the curveball, or those two-tone trousers in the early 80s, all that sort of stuff. And RTD is a bit like that with Doctor Who. It's as if he's just behind the curve. And in the end, what you realize is just get a decent pair of trousers and just forget all the fashions, because your trousers will stay in, actually.
That's why Doctor Who endured for so long anyway, because it was a constant. All this talk of Doctor Who's all about change. No, it isn't. It's been a constant, and that constancy is what was the success, because everything around it was changing. We had Star Wars, and then you had all sorts of things. New science fiction, sort of Buck Rogers, blah blah blah. But yes, that kind of led to its downfall because it didn't keep up. But that's because it wasn't invested in. So I think what they're trying to do here, they were trying to get some investors because they knew it was dying on the vine. They knew this was not a success. So they thought, I bet you, someone at the BBC said, if you don't get some backing in, we can't afford to fund this. So you're going to need to get some investment in or cancelled. I think it was cancelled after Jodie Whitaker's run, and it was RTD and his deal with Disney that succeeded in keeping it going. And I think he thought by making Uber Super Duper Woke, it was going to be a sure thing with Disney. And I think Disney took
if you've been keeping an eye on the gaming industry, does not work.
No. It doesn't work.
Now, and I can see SG, there's all the gossip about whether RTD's left and all the rest of it. I would have thought the logic, I just apply logic. I know nothing, I don't have sources, and I don't claim to. I just try and apply a bit of that. And RTD, in his whole career, if you observe him, he cannot concentrate on one project, on two projects at once. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's in it, in Steven Moffat tried to balance Sherlock and Doctor Who, whether that was successful, but he did. And you can tell from when Steven Moffat talks in one of his scripts, you can see he's much more logistical. Whereas RTD, a bit more passionate, I suppose, in a way with his own projects. He's just more into one project at a time. If he's gone to do the queer drama in Channel 4, he's not touching Doctor Who now. There were rumours that he'd written season 3 scripts, and he said so himself. I have no reason to doubt that. That doesn't mean they've been taken up, and it doesn't mean Doctor Who's being made or anything like that.
It's out of production.
It's out of production, and he's cleared off to Channel 4 to follow another project. Look, Ncuti Gatwa can go and do The Importance of Being in Earnest. That's the beauty of being an actor. But the showrunner, the showrunner just suddenly stops and disappears for a year or two and then comes back. I think, as everybody is saying, apparently he might have left. Well, of course he's left. I mean, who said he's still there? He will sell a season 2, but in what way is he still there when he's moved to Channel 4? He can only do one project at a time. It's all about him.
Well, he did do Doctor Who, Bad Wolf, Sarah Jane Adventures, but that was all in the same production, in the same area, in the same studio, and wearing multiple hats in the same space. But going on Channel 4 to do something is different than doing 3 things at Bad Studios.
Totally, so Archer Colin, the Doctor Who podcast, chasing the current fashion is when there is a delay of months or even years. It's not a workable plan.
When you're chasing to be relevant, you cease to be relevant.
And it's supposed to be bigger than this. So aren't we all grateful that he's the protector of Doctor Who? But of course, how many examples can we pick from Davros, Bigeneration, the sledgehammer creating a second TARDIS, sexualizing the whole Doctor Who crew.
Mavity, for crying out loud.
Mavity.
Oh, look, he's accidentally invented the newest villain. The Oragast.
And this is what I mean. I'm seeing no reason why he actually loves Doctor Who.
The Oragast.
The Oragast.
So everybody, I'm sure we could make the longest list in history of where he has not protected Doctor Who and completely changed it. The Doctor was never gay. He suddenly is very gay. The Doctor was never really chasing romance. He was blooming well chasing it in Rogue. He's changed it.
Wasn't chasing romance. He was chasing.
Yes, how dare I say romance? Lust.
It was pure lust. I mean, it was. I've only ever seen the clips because I was no way going to sit through that. But when he's gyrating his pelvic area to kind of
the only dogging RTD should be doing with Doctor Who is fixing K9.
No, he probably tried to sleep with that as well. You know,
K9 might be. K9 might end up being a female dog because you've got to have representation.
I said something bad and
K9
so much worse.
So here we go. Doctor Who's
so clipped, isn't it?
Doctor Who's Jodie Whitaker reveals 4-word warning she sent in WhatsApps to successor Ncuti Gatwa. Oh, this almost sounds like when Patrick Troughton bumped into Peter Davison in the car park and said only do 3 series. And there's an element of that, which is, and who said she's the expert? Anyway?
What's a 4-word warning? Don't listen to me.
Well, it's a bit like 4 knocks, isn't it? It's like, be very scared if Bernard Cribbins does 4 knocks, then I mean, I don't know.
Well, you would be now.
Well, you would be now, yes. But she just said she sent a whole load of WhatsApps to him, blah, blah, blah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. But she said Jodie is said to have had a 3 series and out agreement. Didn't we all hear that there was a 5-year one and Chris Chibnall had this amazing project and that got curtailed for obvious reasons? Is this a rewriting of history, the 3 series and out rule?
Well, I mean,
of course it is.
It's provable. It's provable that they rewrite history. I mean, look at what they've done with the show. I think they're so complicit in their own lies and their own self-conceit. I think that lying to us is like breathing to them. It's a constant. If you only need to look at how they lie about the history of the show, about the history of certain characters, or the Doctor's always been the Q word, or it's always been this, or it's always been woke, and it's no, it hasn't, and they know they're lying. So it's like second nature to them to lie and lie and lie because it's all about perception.
Oh, well, actually, TARDIS Treasures, I mean, Jeremy, he's even cleverer. He could do 2 words to Ncuti. Gosh, he's good. He's concise. He's concise.
I can think of a few.
So, and while she admits she left the BBC hit on her own terms, she still...
No, she didn't. She was sacked. Get out.
I tell you what, she still felt grief-stricken.
Yeah.
Now,
when
I've left a job because I apparently wanted to leave the job, I'm not grief-stricken. I'm only grief-stricken if, well, it's never happened to me, but if you're pushed and you want it back and you lament that time. So I'm sorry, but those 2 terms don't make sense to me. I don't know.
Capaldi was grief-stricken. He was crying.
Yeah.
Crying. That's grief-stricken, okay? And we don't hear anything about it from him or anyone.
No.
But this woman just will not shut up. And she's always making it about her. He's the victim. Isn't it awful? Isn't it terrible? The white male gaze, blah, blah, blah. Get a grip. Just sod off and do your dramas on Netflix.
She did. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. She did. She I don't know how... I can't describe her style. She was on Jonathan Ross as well. And this was an interview with the Times Radio. And she's just kind of talking away. There's a kind of monotone level. It's quite casual.
I mean, a bit like her acting.
Well, yeah. You may say that.
I do.
Yeah.
On note, you say, yeah.
I genuinely thought that she worked well for the first episode. I actually really enjoyed her first episode. And then everything up, there was no character development, there was no nothing, and it just became, after that episode, it was just messaging after messaging after messaging, and no story, no nothing.
She ended exactly the same as she started.
In that series was bring back this bad guy who is apparently the story arc, and there was no story arc. The story arc did not exist. It received so much
as a Xennial, as a Xennial, James, because this is our Bigenerates element to a degree, isn't it? You kind of have bought into the female doctor could work, whereas I don't really want to tolerate it.
I had at the time, because I was, I started with Tennant's first episode, and then I went backwards. Throughout the modern stuff, and then when more modern stuff came, and I watched it with Tennant, and then when there was no Tennant, that's when I started watching from the beginning, literally the box set at the beginning that starts with an unearthly child.
Great set.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. My bass player came around. In my old band, I'm the bass player now, but my bass player come around and he saw it, and it was supposed to be my birthday party, and he's like, "Oh, can we watch that again?" You know what? Yeah, we can. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, because I was unversed in classic Who at the time, I didn't see a problem with it. But having got where I am now, which is towards the end of the Fourth Doctor, no, it should never have happened.
Yeah.
And I'll just remind people who are listening to us that one of the items we're going to do soon today is the Express article when it says James Bond's franchise and the Doctor Who franchise has been destroyed. And there's a lot of points there. So that would link up very nicely to that. Again, thank you for those in the thread. There's so much being said and done, and I'm trying to bring you all in as much as possible. So Jodie Whitaker started with this. The 3 series and out, and she's grief-stricken that she left a series. Well, it was your choice, apparently, you said.
Yeah, rubbish.
I'm sorry, but it's so... this is not how you want to represent yourself, is it? I mean, you normally leave a job if it's on your terms because you really want to expand your horizons, or it's you've decided it. So therefore, I've never heard people properly regret that unless they've made an absolute balls-up mistake. So I'm not, the grief-stricken doesn't make sense, but blah blah blah, verbal diarrhea. Speaking to
isn't she just so approachable and so endearing?
She loves the fans. She loves whovians.
Yeah. Except only the ones that blow smoke up her body.
Yeah, not the ones who looked at Doctor Who through all those terrible gazes.
In grief and misery, yeah.
The main thing is that it goes so quick, is what she's warned Ncuti. Yeah,
not for us.
After 2 series, I still can't believe my time is over. I was absolutely grief-stricken when it ended, even though it was my choice. Oh, yeah, thank you for telling me again. I felt like I'd given myself 20 paper cuts.
It felt like 1,000 to me.
Death by 1,000 cuts, yeah. I've learned so much. I loved it so much, sorry, but the lines are hard to learn. Yeah, because it's science fiction. Science fiction, and it's well known.
Actor, and you need a science advisor on your script team.
Yeah, you just need someone to go, this is what it means. Although having said that, there was absolutely no scientific concepts at all in the Chibnall era. Lots of running up and down. Yeah, I mean, look, when you've got a scene where she's tied up and then her sonic screwdriver leaps out of her pocket into her hand, no explanation, and then she gets herself out of it within a second. I mean, we are dealing with very lazy writing and terrible direction, quite honestly.
Now you see, Neil, hello, Neil Gadsby here. I hope everybody's subscribed, please. We're trying to get to 1,500. We're bang, bang, bang. We're streaming away like hay fever suffers. I don't believe that Ncuti will be shedding any tears when he leaves the role, ironically. Yeah, and I won't be either, because I just think I did a review of the greatest show on Earth, and by the way, I'll just for a second tell everybody that because I'm in Belfast, there's a few things happening. On the Sunday show, we're reviewing the greatest show in the galaxy, and that is very interesting. My panel are full of opinion, and that's my thumbnail. So I made that before I talked to the panel, but yes, that's a very interesting one because I did feel Sylvester McCoy to a degree was miscast. I'll tell you now, I do.
So did I at the time.
Yeah, those two first series, I just thought, ugh. So basically, 6 o'clock on Sunday. Oh God, a tasty review on the greatest show in the galaxy. You want to see our judgments on that? But Friday there's a double bill because I'm not here. We've got Doctor Who: The Battle of the TV Schedules, and that's at 1 p.m. on Friday. And I've got John Bensalia, who's written books about it and everything. It's just me and him, and we go through from 60s all the way up to New Who into the 2008s and all the rest of it, and we look at all the TV schedules, the good and bad for Doctor Who. And finally, on the Friday night at 7 p.m, you've got another classic review, Carnival of Monsters, a peep into Pertwee Unbound, because my argument is I think Pertwee excelled once he was back into space. So there's 3 shows coming up while I'm apparently just having a few drinks in Belfast. There you go. So back to this argument about Jodie Whitaker. She moves on, by the way. Oh, by the way, at the end of this article, it does another page about the Doctor Who's not being cancelled, as if there's some PR job going on. Did you know?
Really? I would never have guessed that.
She is with the Times Radio, everybody. I'm a huge fan of Ncuti Gatwa. Now,
of course she is.
I didn't do every single screenshot because, you know, I do have a life. But she in between did say she doesn't watch it. So, I mean...
I'm a huge fan. Don't watch your show, but I'm a huge fan. Yeah, please.
So the subtitles have to put in Gatwa, because even though Ncuti Gatwa is currently the Doctor,
but you see, isn't this the...
add in after Ncuti that you
no one knows who he is.
Ncuti Gatwa.
Isn't this the identity politics?
Ncuti who?
Isn't this the identity politics though? Or I'm a real good fan of Ncuti's Doctor, but I don't watch it. I mean, how the hell? So what you're judging it on? Oh, I wonder what. So yeah, that's where she starts. Nice tasty start to that one. And then she's asked this question. And I have to say, sometimes the questions you think, there was an article I read a couple of weeks ago that seemed to be suggesting that Doctor Who was just having a bit of a kind of fallow patch at the moment. Can it come back kind of bigger and brighter? She asks Jodie Whitaker. Now, first of all, the question, a fallow patch. Can these people honestly be open and honest? As my mum always said, Brendan, you're the boy in the Emperor's New Clothes. You just say it as it is. Sometimes you make enemies that way. You sometimes don't get promotion that way. But you're telling the truth.
Yeah, you got them screwed up, woman.
Yeah. So basically, Doctor Who, we know since 2000, well, oh God, it's well over a decade now, has been bumping around and struggling in many different ways. Almost it's lost its identity. And she calls it a fallow patch. My God. Anyway, Jodie Whitaker says, I think they said that about me.
No.
They say that about everything. Oh, we are dismissed. Oh, we've getting cancelled now because we dismiss everything.
It's funny though, when the show is good and we've been watching it for decade after decade and loving so much of it, and then you come along to do a massive turn on it, and then they always complain. No, when we love something, you can look at classic shows and in Doctor Who that stories that we love, and we can talk passionately about that for hour after hour. But when it comes to your turgid era, darling, I'm sorry. No, there's nothing of any value. It cheapened the show. You helped cheapen the show. And that's not us complaining about everything. It's us complaining about you, Chibnall, and the BBC specifically. it's a very, if you actually bothered yourself and listened to the argument, and not just the people who told you how wonderful and amazing you are all the time, you probably understand the level of frustration. But because you don't care or don't want to know, you're only concerned about how does this affect my career. And I think ultimately you don't care. If you did care, you would probably have listened to your agent and gone, you know what, I better get out of this. It's not
Well,
right.
we've got one of our in a thread. I mean, with great irony, Sunny Waffles. I'm a fan of this Doctor Who 8-episode miniseries I never watched. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is how can you be critical of Doctor Who nowadays? It's got all the tick boxes you would want.
Yeah, but she can say I'm a big fan of Ncuti Gatwa without watching him. So I mean, it works.
Yeah.
The other way.
Well, no, because that makes sense.
Oh, of course.
Because
yeah, it does. Because apparently
the show was better than somebody else when she was in it.
That's it.
Because I've heard about. I've not watched it myself, apparently, but I've heard that some of the plots are very interesting about this, that, and all they do is they see the issues and they go, "It must be amazing." Sorry, ratings tanking. Season 3 not commissioned yet.
Annoying things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, reality,
Timothy Carter's put me in the sin bin now. He loves Sylvester McCoy, and of course, for everyone who doesn't like one of the Doctors, there's always somebody who, of course, that's true.
I loved him more recently than I did at the time. I mean, at the time, it was such a stark difference from Tom, Peter, Colin. For me, it was a very jarring. I don't think it was necessarily Sylvester's fault. I think a lot of it stemmed from the terrible choice of background music. For me, I'm sorry, that music did my nutting at the time. Well, and it felt CBeebies,
Yeah, the greatest show in the galaxy that we review on the Sunday at 6, Kef McCullough. Oh my God, I try and hold back. I try and.
I know.
Anyway, I've obviously I've triggered people. I know I will always be honest, and I know the Sylvester McCoy fans out there. That guy from CT Alpha, and I like him. I've met him many times. I like him.
Remembrance.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to take over. I kind of like cleared my throat and coughed at the same time. I've got a cold. I wasn't being rude.
I'm trying not to sniffle myself. I hear you.
Yeah, this is it. Anthony Parkinson didn't watch the show before her, doesn't watch the show after her, but I'll bet she watched her own. Right. This is what I mean. We can smell out identity politics and virtue signaling a mile off nowadays. So anyway, I can see that's really got everybody's juices going. So basically, now this is safety in numbers pretending to, isn't it? Which is, the question is, Doctor Who's going through a bad patch. I'm not even looking at the last bit, which is, can it be better and brighter? Well, yeah, get some good writers in. But
I don't want it bigger. I don't want it brighter. I want it smaller, darker. Okay.
Lee, don't you want high jinx?
I completely agree. I completely concur.
I don't want high jinx. I want intelligently written, smart, witty, clever, fun, adventurous stories with someone who doesn't come across as a complete idiot. Is that too much to ask, seemingly?
There's no future for it, Lee. There's no future for it. What we need is sex, rock and roll, and everything else. That power.
I want practical intrigue set in space.
Yeah.
I think, as I've always said, and I've not seen evidence to take me away from it, and so my opinion is hardening all the time, which is the BBC and actually the people running Doctor Who, number one, don't like it. They're bored with the concept and they want to make it into something that they think is trendy. But as we've already said today, that will be a fad and then it'll move on.
Well, look at how they talked about the TARDIS console, with RTD and Moffat. It's like you walk in and it's the Enterprise. I don't want the Enterprise. I want the TARDIS console room.
Yeah,
I do want the Enterprise, but I don't want it in Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, yeah.
Well, that's the thing that's missing. That's the other question with Verity Lambert. And we know this bit about Verity Lambert because it's renowned when she had the set 2 with Sidney Newman about the Daleks and other occasions, that she had a real belief in a program that had not existed before. She believed in it. She had a certainty, and so she sold it to everybody, including her bosses. Go, I really good for you.
Bless her.
Yeah, because let's face it, I think the media lovies now would have just backed down.
I think if Verity were alive today, she would be burying her head in her hands. I think she would take one look at what's going on. She would not like this. We know, because she was very critical of, you know, a lot of the doctors. You know, she didn't even like Pertwee that much. You know, she liked Tom Baker.
Yeah,
He says he was the closest to it. She thought Peter Davison was a mistake. You know, I think she was very forthright, and she would tell you exactly what she was thinking. And I think that they know. I think they don't tend to dredge her up, because I think they know that she would be 100% against it.
yeah.
But they would probably put words in her mouth if they did. Quite honestly,
Well,
they did.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's been a cultural shift in the media. They're not trying to inform us and entertain us anymore. They're trying to make us like them.
You will be like us.
Let's throw out the word minions.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Why are children being taught that minions are cool?
Well, the other thing here is her answer to Doctor Who's having a fallow patch is, they said that about me, and they say that about everything. And that's what I said about the safety in numbers, that she seems to be saying, we've always done that. And you go, no, you can't.
No, it was specifically you.
Well, yeah, it wasn't Capaldi.
No. It was.
When was Matt Smith's fallow patch?
Yeah, it started.
When was Christopher Eccleston's fallow patch?
It started with the Moffat era. It started around about season 6 or 7, I'd say. You know, that's when it started noticeably declining. It was noticeable during the Capaldi era, with the stories he was given, and it was quite an awkward watch a lot of the time. I was quite bored quite a lot of the time. But she came on, and Chibnall, I mean, it was written for bloody idiots. I'm sorry. It was just nonsense. And the performance was, her idea of the role of the Doctor was, this is a kiddie-widdy show, so I'm going to play it like a kiddie-widdy show.
Yes, it was. I mean, Doctor Who's been CBBS for a while now. We even had them guest starring in episode 1.
CBBS meets Pornhub, you know.
Yeah. Well, Paul Richards here says, Verity Lambert said the Doctor shouldn't be a good-looking male model, but an unusual-looking eccentric. Well, she also said she wanted the mystery back. She was very clear on that one, but she was such a polite lady, actually, that she wouldn't, you know, I mean, if she's asked, I think she'll give you an opinion. And, but she didn't go out there seeking the publicity to challenge the show. And she did respect everybody's turn on the show. And I think that sort of thing's gone, because remember, Bad Wolf dissed the 80s Doctor Who. They called it pastiche.
Yeah, which is ironic, isn't it? Considering how much of a pastiche it is now. I mean, it's nothing but pastiche. It's a parody of itself. There's hardly any connective tissue at all to the classic series, and half of it is not even connective tissue to New Who.
No.
Really?
So we've got here, another question was, what is it about that show that means people, I think that means us, just need to have an opinion about it?
Because we're fans, and that's what fans do.
Yeah, to constantly kind of poke it. Now, again, criticism and critical inquiry and asking questions about where's the logic gone when the Doctor was always like this, for example, that's now poking at it, and that's now actually being out of order. There's a way we have to behave now, apparently, I infer from that.
This is a fundamental misunderstanding and a misrepresentation of fandom in general. It's when people talk about the nerds and the geeks have inherited the earth, you know, we now run it. No, you're still looked upon with this kind of wide-eyed intrigue as to what the hell are they talking about. They don't understand the passion or the mentality of fandom, and this is why they take every opportunity to admonish and diminish it, because they don't understand it. People who are like this interviewer, I'm not having a go at her specifically because she is clearly not a fan or someone who's on the outside looking in, I can understand that. But someone like Jodie Whitaker, if you cast someone like Ncuti, clearly not a geek or a nerd. He's a fashionista, so he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand it. Jodie Whitaker doesn't understand it. She's a supposedly serious actress. But I just don't think that they get the mentality of what goes with a show like Doctor Who. It's not like EastEnders. It's not like other shows like Casualty or whatever. And it just isn't.
And look, this is, I mean, I know she's for the Times Radio. She's not a BBC, but she sounds classic BBC in a way where they don't understand Doctor Who. Now, they did poke, I mean, they're saying poke fun. When I do the Greatest Show in the Galaxy review on Sunday at 6, one of the things we all know, the whiz kid on the BMX bike, you know what I mean? That was a dig directly at Doctor Who fans. The BBC and this lot have been doing it for years. They do not understand science fiction geeks, fans. They think we're weird. That's why we like Doctor Who, because it was an outsider, pariah type program. It was niche. And now, of course, because it seems to be global and it's now on brand, on message, suddenly we're all told to shut up, stop saying stuff. And it's been, as I said the other day, captured.
Yeah, I mean, the Greatest Show in the Galaxy, you had the boy in the bicycle, didn't you, who was representing fandom.
Yes.
You had the character of the professor chap with the werewolf companion, who was basically another version of the Doctor and a companion, but a sort of an evil, twisted version. But this isn't new either, because during the Pertwee run, you had that with the my brain's gone. What was the story? Jeez, what's happening with me today? Well, I'm going to blame it on that. But we've had that before.
It's because you've got no conviction, Lee. You're just following a fad.
I know, isn't it terrible? I'm such a fan.
So Dark Wolf here. Doctor Who has always been woke, apparently. Don't you remember in the 70s when the Brigadier made out with Sergeant Benton about stopping global warming? I mean, there's always been touches of I hate the word messaging and I hate the word politics, actually, because it was too cleverly put in half the time, really. But this does grieve me, because I just think
Carnival of Monsters, that was it, sorry.
Oh, well, that's the one I'm reviewing on Friday at 7. So very handy. Some tasty ones there. Let's have a look. Let me just, for example, get it back up again. So, yes, we've got that on Sunday and we've got that on Friday night. And in between, we've got a battle of the TV schedules. There's a few tasty things all on Doctor Who there. So, we've got a bit of a sniffy question here, haven't we? And then from the sniffy question, you get her answer. So, basically, why do people have to have a go at Doctor Who? Why do they want to? And she says the show it's not even just based on regeneration. Like a new season from, my 3 seasons, it still has to be relevant and to contribute to this wealth of access to shows that we have now.
What's she even talking about? That's absolute nonsense. She hasn't got a damn clue. And this is
you're not on message.
It's another thing I've noticed about Jodie Whitaker and Ncuti Gatwa particularly. Isn't it interesting when they cast against time, they seem to cast the most fundamentally ill-prepared, uninterested,
so
lowbrow. I mean, look at interviews with John Pertwee, Peter Davison, Tom Baker, Capaldi, Matt Smith. Intelligent people, just generally quite intelligent people, even Tennant to a degree, were good in interviews. Were and just talking absolute gibberish. They considered what they were saying and they've informed you with a thoughtful answer.
Well, Lee,
here we don't have that at all.
Lee, I'm sorry, out of order. What you've been triggered by one of her words? No. What later on in her very long, strange
vegetable in her word salad were you triggered by?
So, well, the word I'm picking up on. the word I'm picking up on is relevance. She eventually gets to the point and says certain questions about Doctor Who's relevance.
She's been trained to say that. I mean, it's quite clear when you start casting because of the DI in terms of you, and DI has got nothing to do with sexuality, gender, blah, 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 none of that. All it matters is, do you agree with us politically or don't you? That's what it all boils down to. So she's on board the message. So, of course, things like buzzwords like relevance and all these other buzzwords that they trump up are a consequence of unintellectualism, anti-intellectualism. I'm on board with the current group thing.
But you see,
the word that is part of that.
But you said it earlier, and I totally agree because obviously
I would use the word tribalism.
Yeah, it is tribal. Yeah, very much.
But having taught some science fiction and obviously having watched science fiction, we know, and we've said it today, and Lee said it, which is basically, science fiction was relevant. The point is, their version of relevance is about the identity politics.
And it's irrelevant. It's the most irrelevant. When you start focusing on immutable traits, which are superfluous, superficial, really kind of meaningless things, which we should be beyond at this point, then you're basically gazing at your belly button and trying to make that entertainment for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think relevance is portraying the world as it is, or finding out about the world as it is
through other means. And I think as well, it's very important to say that, and I said this earlier, science fiction is always relevant, but you have to write good science fiction to make it relevant.
And it also tends to take a slightly wider view. So basically, we were talking earlier today about fads and fashions, and that's when it, don't chase them. RTD, don't chase them.
Dated.
Yes. Pap and useless science fiction or pretend science fiction will tend to go down this path of trying to reflect in a mirror exactly what's happening this second, and that's it. But it doesn't take a wider view.
It should be a universal thing. Like, how is it we can go back and watch Doctor Who from 1970 and find more value in that then than anything from today from Doctor Who? It speaks volumes to me. It really does.
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious answer is because that's when people are actually trying to write Doctor Who. And now they're not trying to write Doctor Who, they're trying to I don't want to say the word because it's a buzzword, but they're trying to indoctrinate.
Yeah, I mean,
they used to try to tell stories, which is what they want, and it's easier to do.
I know there's certain words I kind of challenge in a way though, because I don't know what the true intent is. I need evidence. I can suspect it, but I just don't have the evidence, and so I'm always a bit careful about that. Only because I like evidence before I say it. You know what I mean? It's like now. Just
well, I have a lot of evidence from the gaming sphere, and I am making assumptions that the TV sphere is the same.
Yeah.
And I have no reason not to do that.
Yeah. It's just, it is a buzzword, of course it is. Yeah. Now, we saw it earlier when SG was mentioning it. Doctor Who's Russell T Davies says there are conversations about the next showrunner. This is on David Tennant's podcast. And as they were talking, I'll get straight to it. So yeah, they're laughing. There's a lot of humor there and flippancy. As it says in the second paragraph there, after Davies joked on David Tennant does a podcast with that he won't come back a third time at any point in the future, Tennant teased that, well, you've come back for a second time. But then there's this bit. This is the key bit that people are talking about. Now, everybody, let's look at the context and we can all then conclude what our version is. Middle paragraph, but I will need to slow down at some point, he says. That'll come. Last time it was Steven Moffat who replaced him. That wasn't even a day's work. Like, right, off you go. He added, but there's thinking about that. There's conversations about that. But it's hard. It's a tricky one. But they better exist. Imagine I'm dead at the desk. The cliche would kill me. Now, I don't know. That last paragraph confuses me, and I've studied.
I'm dead at the desk. The cliche would kill me. How are you going to be killed if you're already dead? Look, they can't write.
Well, this is another thing about this interview that they had with each other at this love fest. He was saying that being the showrunner for Doctor Who and writing for Doctor Who and producing it was akin to hard labor. You know, I was just like, are you out of your mind? Like he's already said, you know, about people being in the creative industry, it would be a shame if they ended up selling shoes. I'm like, well, you're not really talking to the working class here very much,
No,
are you?
no.
But I think, you know, he's so caught up in his own genius, because he always talks about how intelligent he is. Which, if you listen to the Tennant thing, it was just like, geez, this guy's ego is off the charts. But I think if you were that intelligent, you wouldn't destroy certain archetypes and try and replace them and then wonder why it doesn't work.
Well, let's have a look at this last paragraph, because this is what a lot of streamers have dug on into. So, of course, you know, like I said, people can all pick a word and go, oh, I'm going to do a stream today for 10 minutes and say, RTD's leaving now and all. Well, hold on. Let's just look at this. He says at first, if you want to jump on this bit, there's a thinking about that, there's conversations about, but it's hard. Right? Okay, right. It's a tricky one, but they better exist. Now, I'm sorry, Lee, but that first bit doesn't link with the second bit. One is a future tense, and one is saying they are. So they can't both be right. Are they thinking about a new showrunner, or they're better because one day I'll die? I mean,
when was all this stated? Is this in the last few days, or is this like weeks ago?
Yeah, it's recent.
I just don't know. I think they are potentially holding out for a final last-minute reprieve, but I think it's delusional. Or they're just protecting the current season, which hasn't aired yet, before it all comes out in the wash anyway. I wouldn't really read too much into this, quite honestly. I don't think it should be down to them to decide anyway. If anything, the BBC should be removing it from the clutches totally and implementing someone else.
So the conclusion...
You guys are familiar with English football, right? Like what the Americans would call soccer.
Yeah, vaguely.
I think what needs to happen with Doctor Who is basically a fan takeover. Like the old Wimbledon Football Club sold out to an company, and they got called AFC something or other. And the original fans, their fan club, they got together and made a new football club.
The thing is,
they're now higher than them in the league, or they were like 10 years ago.
I used to live in Wimbledon.
I think Doctor Who fans need to do that. I think we need to start making Doctor Who.
No, I know I understand your logic, and I've seen it in football, and it's the workers unite and all of it. But come on, get Doctor Who fans in a pub, and they don't agree. And didn't we suffer this with Ian Levine and everything? We've been here before when fans think they've got proprietorial ownership of the program. No, you want people who are damn good writers and producers who may not have any expertise and actually might give a fresh eye. Now, this is what we're all about. James,
I am available.
Sorry?
I am available.
Well, this is what I mean. We are allowed to disagree on this one, because I don't agree with you, but I see your point.
Oh, sure.
But you know what I mean? Because that was a bit of the 80s that I worried about when Ian Levine and others were kind of, having a word with J&T about this, that, and the other. And I thought, no, fans shouldn't be anywhere near the show, to be honest.
Well, considering this show is supposed to be a debate, it's about time we disagreed on something.
It is. Now, shut up. No. But no,
I stand by what I say. I think that we should start making Doctor Who ourselves, and we should. Yes, I do mean us, but I don't mean like every prodding YouTuber individually. I mean, like, we should make little teams of ourselves and start producing our own show which we think would be Doctor Who.
Okay, I'm going to bring Lee in because he is a third party here, and I don't know what he's going to say. But the thing is, I worry about target audiences, because if you go for a smaller audience who want this, you're not broadening horizons, you're diminishing them. Anyway, Lee, what's your thoughts on whether we should have fans anywhere near the program or miles away?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really complicated situation, because I think we've seen the result of fandom taking. I think the Fitzroy thing was a shoe-in since the 1990s. You know, with the novelizations, the Virgin novels, and all this kind of stuff. So all that cliquey sort of thing started up there. I think I've noticed with Doctor Who fandom, particularly, there is a certain vicious streak.
Yeah.
There's a certain proprietorial sense.
Yep.
It's very tribal. It's very keeping up with the Joneses. It's very middle class. It's very antagonistic to anyone who's outside of the elite. And there is an elitism. There is a pyramid within this fandom, and I think it's got to go. I think it's always been there. It hasn't, but I think it's become very, very self-evident with the rise of Bad Wolf and all this kind of stuff. Was a direct lineage to the Dwas kind of elite groups, you know, and we've seen it with how Gallifrey Base treated its members. And I think that you've got too much, and it's not about toxic fandom as such. You know, when people talk about toxic fandom, they mean basically the people don't politically align with me. But I think there's a toxicity in fandom in of the up-down.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just bring in the thread for a moment, because they're answering where they stand on this. So drawing Jackrabbit won't work. No. This is the whether we get fans involved or not. Because this show has the most narcissistic, entitled, mentally ill, nasty fandom I've ever encountered. That's why I'm out. I have ideas, but nobody will accept them.
But, you know, he's not wrong. And I will defend that. And I, as I said, there is a nasty, nasty element. And I think it is very much a very proprietary. I mean, to say it's on the spectrum, it would be underserving it. I think there is a certain pathological desire to have ownership of Doctor Who, and I think is self-destructive in the long run.
I mean,
so I would suggest it goes to someone who is a proficient professional science fiction writer who understands Doctor Who, but isn't necessarily deeply involved.
Well, I'd be fascinated by a producer, an experienced TV producer. The writer, they can pick the writers. I'll just say somebody's going to run the show, right? And they may not have a science fiction hinterland, but they are bright enough that they ask questions, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is hold on, James. They will say, what is this program about? That's the first question. And they really then inquire about what's made it successful, when it's had its fallow patches. Why is the fandom not united behind this amazing franchise? If you ask a lot of questions, you'll then start to germinate an idea about how you can retrieve the situation. But I don't think fans are too involved. We're too imbued in it. In fact, we're too close to it. And you get any fan talking about Doctor Who and what should happen next. And I've done plenty of streams that do that. Or you've all been in a pub and talked about this. You know what happens. People say, well, if they rewrite this bit, if the Timeless Children is a fantasy parallel, I'm sorry, think of Joe Public, who go, what? What's this? Give me a good story, please.
That's the unfortunate part. You need to canonize everything that's been actually officially called Doctor Who by the BBC.
I don't know. I think it's given enough time and a big enough culture change. I think the only way for Doctor Who to ever survive, and this is how I see it, and you know, you can agree or disagree, it's fine, but I would say it needs to go away for 15 to 20 years. Honestly, I think long after we're gone, quite probably, for it to actually come back, and because people need to.
12 years would be enough, but I generally agree.
I think people need to give it enough time, because people need to forget the rot, but also take time to miss what they loved about it. And I think if there's anyone left you know. But I think that ultimately it's an enduring concept, but it has to be done right. And I think the only way you can ever really bring it back is to have someone professional with enough nous and enough fortitude to go, right, we are going to bring back Doctor Who, but we're going to bring it back. We're not going to reference the past. We're not going to delve too deeply into the lore. We're not going to number the Doctor. We're going to say what Doctor he is, what number he is. And we're just going to go from there, complete a complete new page. You know, don't go backwards, keep moving it forwards. And I would also say that, you know, you can, if you ever reference anything from Doctor Who lore, stick with the classics. Don't mention anything from the current, because I just think it's too much now. Too much bad blood, negativity, and all this very corporatizing of it has been too.
Yeah. When you get commercialism into, I mean, that's what's killing it. What it needs though is we need to get to that point when, like you said, it has to stand on its own merits. And I think when fans talk about Doctor Who and what we can do in the future, they're leaning on a crutch like the Daleks or Gallifrey. No, it has to be a very exciting, interesting story and concept.
Bring the mystery back in. Yeah.
And so basically, as soon as somebody says, but if you have the Cybermen, no, stop. You honestly need are there any stories left? That's the first blooming question. Are there any stories left to do? Now, hopefully the answer is yes.
Well, I don't think there are any Cybermen stories left. I mean,
I disagree. I think it's an intelligence thing, and I'm not using the word to be pompous, but I'm saying if you're smart enough, bright enough, and understand scientific concepts enough, there's so much you can do with the Cybermen.
But with Lumac, they literally had to make a parallel universe in order to use the Cybermen again.
Well, that's nonsense. I mean, I just don't think relying on these tropes to forward things is just because you haven't really thought it through properly and for long enough and deep enough. And I just think there's so much history there to look back at. You don't need to be a fan of Doctor Who to be able to research it and understand anyway. But I would say, to move it forward, you know, just be another sort of Philip Hinchcliffe or Barry Letts. They were still developing the show as it was ongoing, you know, because there wasn't overly so much of it, you know, as we do today. But I would say, you know, what the core of Doctor Who is, and that's from the original run. And I don't think that New Who's ever really been a true continuation. I would see it as a reboot, and I would just reboot it again. But I mean, at what point do you have enough people who care?
I remember
people who love New Who and grow up with it in 20 years' time go, oh yes, but it's not the show that I grew up with. But
you see,
or we'll be dead from the original.
But Doctor Who is a victim of this, and so you know it's a very old franchise, and because it's roughly been on most of the time, we're all bogged down in that continuity thing. And this is the point. I think, not as fans, but as people and viewers, we have to make a decision soon, which is, do we want it to keep limping on? Because it has been limping on for another decade or so, and it tries to link to the past, or it tries to just embrace itself. It believes in itself. When Sidney Newman, David Whitaker, and Verity Lambert and Mervyn Pinfield and everyone started this whole project, you know, we've all seen the documents. It wasn't much of a write-up, but the concept was there and they carried it. But I think now, can you imagine starting Doctor Who now with millions of pages of context? I think they need to go back to brass tacks and actually leave the continuity alone, and they need to actually say, is there an audience out there, number one, and actually really truly think this through about whether you can continue a 62, 63-year-old program, or what you do is you have the concept, but you start again.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, you know, you want to go back to the mystery of not knowing who the Doctor is or anything about him. And I think if you leave enough time to pass, you know, there's plenty for people to go and delve back if they want to. But you want to reintroduce it in a way that has the Doctor being a mysterious figure again. And
okay,
maybe he's got amnesia. He doesn't know who the Daleks are. I was talking to Jack about this earlier. You know, you don't know anything. He doesn't know. You know, everything's new again. You know, he's met the Sidemen for the. Maybe time is cyclical. Maybe he's been recycled. Maybe something has happened. You know, in the story, and it's erased, not erased, but it is running parallel to or whatever, without bringing in multiverses and crap like that. But just something where you can just have that reset and it's just fresh again. And you know, and I don't, going to Jack's point there, you know, about, you know, the word intelligent, it's like, I don't mean it to be so it's dictatorial or you have to be with a degree in order to understand what's going on, but I mean, you know, someone with intelligence to back it, you know,
I think it
who
would be
understands it.
When you know, RTD says, oh, dark times, mental health and everything, I think to dovetail what Lee's just said, I think the quick trick, you don't need the master lied about the Matrix and all that continuity crap. What you do is the Doctor, he bumps his head, PTSD, something like that. And like you said, it wipes his memory. It just wipes away who he is and everything, because it can happen. So you're looking at a real condition, and you take it from there. He doesn't know what number he is, who he is, where he's from. He doesn't even know how to work the TARDIS again.
I don't think you should even reference it, you know. I mean, just start as if this is just a brand new show. You got all the elements there ready to go, and he's off, you know, off an adventure, and you know, all these things can be sort of peppered in, but it's not weighing it down with baggage. You know, it's creating it's forging its own destiny, forging its own
that would be a better way to make a show, but I can't agree with like cancelling all of the lore. What I do
just ignore it.
There should be a point at which we actually what you said, Brendan, at a point at which we cut it off, and I think that should be before the TV movie, before the McGann movie.
I would go from McGann personally. If you're going to reference anything,
I would like him. So I absolutely loved his performance in the 50th anniversary special.
But you see, can I just say before Lee cuts in that this is the issue? If you get fans who take over the show, do we cut it off at 2017, 1996, 1989? We don't agree. I mean, it's like,
well, we've finally done what we intended to do.
This is the crux. That's why I say if you leave it enough time, and I think 15 years probably is a good time, because you'll have that huge distance between those two very distinct versions of the show. But I think people will harken back, even if when they're new Who fans will think, well, do I really? It was a bit of a mess how it sort of convoluted into all this, and it was very contrived. But go back to the original source material, which is the original run, and just carry on from there. I'm not saying that you erase the entirety of New Who. You can put that into something of its own thing. It's its own thing. But I think genuinely, because it's so contradictory now to a lot of the original intentions of the show and the original run of the show, I think you want to kind of reconnect that connective tissue, but without necessarily overtly drawing attention to it or mentioning it or bogging down yourself with it, but going from there as a reference point, as a starting point, and you continue the story on from there. But you don't know how far down the line you are.
It's too busy being self-referential rather than referring to the and directing to the audience. You're supposed to engage them. Now, one thing I wanted to show, it's still on the same subject, so I'm trying not to curtail anything. But I mentioned earlier the Daily Express article saying James Bond and Doctor Who have been destroyed by exactly the same thing. And here you've got and so farewell James Bond and Doctor Who, and then they give us the context, and then they said in some weird psychological melodrama that we will probably never understand, RTD quite brilliantly revived the show in 2005, but he seems to have spent the last few years trying to destroy it. Now, this is an article, I'm just showing you it. Gay rights, trans issues, a female doctor. Guess what, folks? The viewers hated it and have been deserting in droves. Although they are such different characters, a Lothario assassin versus a humanity-loving space traveller, Bond and the Doctor have always had a strange link in the public eye. When a new one was
I would
announced...
not suggest that the third Doctor is really very different from Bond at all.
Well, yeah, I agree. I'll just show you the last bit, though, and then we can have our little debate on it.
I'm not saying that as a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah. That is no reflection on him, merely the fact that by the time he wielded the sonic screwdriver, most people were so sick of the show's recent preoccupations that they just didn't care anymore. And then we've got both are quintessentially British, we were saying that earlier, and on the side of good. And both have been destroyed by exactly the same trend, identity politics. They give a bit more context, and then it says... And then it says, and we don't want a gay doctor either. Many of my closest friends, but that is just not who the doctor is any more than he is a woman. He isn't. And you know what they say? Go woke, go broke. And it continues like that. So basically, as you see in many memes and everything, you can have your Star Wars. They list so many franchises that are getting destroyed by the same thing. But I do think Doctor Who's been hauled below the waterline more.
Yeah, well, the two paragraphs that you read out, I would call entirely accurate.
Yeah. Lee?
I mean, I'm just so tired of modern day politics having to be the reference point for all our entertainment, and how
entertainment is supposed to be where we get away from
exactly. It's just, can we just not anymore? The whole point of entertainment is to have escapism. Yes, you can reference things, but Doctor Who is not a soap opera. If you want relevancy, go and watch EastEnders, even though it's probably not even relevant anymore.
EastEnders is crap. Watch it.
Yeah, I have no interest. Okay, but if you want to preach, you know, go and do your LGBTQ dramas, go do your Trump bashing documentaries or dramas or whatever it is. You know, whatever you. Doctor is not your vehicle. Yeah, Doctor is not your vehicle. James Bond is not your vehicle. James Bond is a very specific character from a very specific time, and I think updating it, make it more relevant, is a mistake. I would put James Bond back in the 1950s and 60s and go from there. Make it a period thing.
Yeah, you don't. It doesn't have to be set in the modern day. So yeah, I mean, and we could go on, but I'll finish off with this, folks. It's on the same theme. Jack Thursby here. I saw his tweet, and I'm always interested. My vox pops in the vortex. Here we go. Everyone is still saying Doctor Who is on the brink of cancellation. It's already dead, of course, but it's crawled on for 8+ years with laughably bad stories and pathetically lame doctors, lecturing and berating the fans the whole time. This slop won't flush that easily. So the argument is, well, it is slowly dying. It's
the legacy, isn't it? RTD and all that Fitzroy clique are so egotistically driven that they want their legacy to live on longer in terms of the original 27-year run or whatever it was. You know, I think it's generally them trying to get it over that finishing line that, oh, we lasted longer than the original run, therefore we are taking, you know, the dominance, you know, we are the longest running version of the show. But I think that's really what it is. I genuinely believe that, and I think that in that rush to kind of keep it going, you know, at any cost, is actually costing them their legacy rather than actually enhancing it.
There you go. Final words, James?
Well, I mean, I think it's really sad, but I think it needs to go. I want it back, but I want it back like either season 5 of the reboot or before the TV movie. I'm not saying the TV movie is bad. I really like Paul McGann as the Doctor, but those are the two cutting off points. A lot of people say, including a channel that I'm a big part of, the main view there is that it's Heaven Sent should be the last episode of what we consider canon. For me, it's what I just said.
Yeah. So there you go, folks. We've we've champed around a bit. So join us again on Friday when we've got 2 shows as usual. I don't know how I do it. Doctor Who: The Battle of the TV Schedules. That's at 1 p.m. on Friday. And then later that night at 7 p.m, the Carnival of Monsters. Great review. We've got What Would Ncuti Do and all the rest of it. It's all there. The Intimacy Watch. And then on Sunday at 6, we've got The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I've got my own version of that. We have then When Sutek Sleeps, because of course I keep applying that Sutek logic of RTD, and we have all the judgments there. Thanks for the thread being alive and well, and wow, thank you very much for that. I can now vacate the premises and go to Belfast for a couple of days. Thank you very much, James. Again, I know you're knackered, aren't you? But
I'm all right.
Yeah. Well, we need the Bigenerates set up, and Lee,
I can always talk about Doctor Who. I can do it in my sleep.
Of course. And Lee, thank you again.
Pleasure.
Sure we'll do it again. But
Great
thank you, everyone. Bye for now, everyone. Please repost, please subscribe. Bye.
Cheerio.